Again, our radar doesn't have the best look at this storm. We'll go switch over to the National Weather Service radar in what is now Fort Johnson. It used to be Fort Polk, but again, there was a name change there. But this is the storm that is approaching the Highway 167 corridor, a little bit better vantage point as we look from the Fort Polk radar. And this storm has spun up very, very aggressively just to the north and east of Calvin. In fact, I would be wondering if there's not a tornado on the ground just to the west of Dodson. This is your time to act, folks, as you move toward the Highway 167 corridor. Tornado watch has been in effect for about the last hour to hour and a half. And these types of storms are going to be possible, especially along and south of the I-20 corridor through the early parts of the evening. And you'll see me kind of join you on screen and step off screen as we get more information from the National Weather Service offices and whatever information they may be able to provide as well. I'm going to zoom in rather closely on this storm as you look at the possible tornado as it approaches the Dodson area. Again, please just be in mind that radar is not a perfect tool, and so we are trying to give you the best idea of the possible tornado in this area and trying to get as specific as possible. But if you are in the tornado warned area, if you have received the alert on your phone, or if you live in northern Wind Parish, you need to take proper tornado precautions now. We get overly specific with these storms just so you can kind of really track it down to the very minute. But if you're in the warning, we want you to take the proper tornado precautions as they stand right now. You can see Tannehill Road behind me. I'm zooming in as closely as possible to maybe try to get some more of these road names. For some reason, they are not popping up on screen. Here's Old Dodson Road. That'll move approaching 167 there in the southwest of the community of Dodson. So again, here's 167, the red line here, the red flashing box, everyone that is under this tornado warning as it moves off to the north and east. The environment overall should be fairly conducive for these types of storms, basically meaning it would favor these types of storms through the rest of the afternoon. We do not expect this to last all the way into the night, but this will be a severe weather threat that will carry us through at least the next couple of hours. I'm going to switch over to the National Weather Service in Shreveport's radar, which again probably has a better vantage point of what we're seeing across the entire area. A reminder of the severe thunderstorm warning that is also in effect now across portions of Grant Parish. It also includes Natchitoches Parish until 3 o'clock. But again, the most important thing is the tornado warning that's now in effect until 3 p.m. for northern sections of Wind Parish. If you are in the northern sections of Louisiana along the I-20 corridor, you are also under a tornado watch. But again, the overall conditions are not as favorable as what we're seeing currently across the northern sections of Wind Parish. This is an environment and a storm that has wrapped up basically right along the warm front, if I had to guess. There is a warm front lifting northward in our area, and where you see a warm front in this type of environment, it usually provides kind of ample wind shear, and it maximizes wind shear in the atmosphere, meaning these storms can spin rather efficiently, rather quickly in the environment. So when you have a day like today, it doesn't take much for storms to really start spinning in the environment rather rapidly. The instability in the environment is a little bit more limited, but these storms have not taken much to really kind of get going as we've gone through the afternoon, especially south of our area. In our area, we've seen a lot of elevated thunderstorms, things that what we're seeing currently in north central Louisiana, nothing really severe, but along that warm front, as it starts to retreat northward over our area, it brings a more favorable environment for severe thunderstorms. So the front itself, the warm front, is basically winding through central sections and southern sections of our viewing area, and that's what's really peaked the wind shear moving toward the Dodson area and this possible tornado. If I were to circle this tornado, it would again be in this area right to the southwest of Dodson. And again, keep in mind that radar loops are imperfect. We're trying to pinpoint things as specifically as possible, but also on that note that the information that you may be getting, whether it be from a live stream or here on air, it may be 30 to 40 seconds delayed, and again, 30 to 40 seconds mean a lot in terms of moving quickly to get to a safe place. As this storm now approaches Dodson along Highway 165, I will go ahead and kind of recircle what we had here on the screen. This is the area I'm talking about right here, moving right along the Highway 167 corridor. If you have friends or family in that area, make a call. I know it's early afternoon, not everyone necessarily heading home from work yet, but again, make phone calls. Let people know that if they're traveling in this area, generally toward Alexandria, Alexandria are heading over to Natchitoches. This is a fairly popular roadway. Folks eventually will head west in Winfield over toward Natchitoches. So if you know friends and family that are in this area, make phone calls. Let them know that they need to pull over the nearest stop that they can find. And I would suggest that it not be south of Dodson because of where this storm has really wrapped up in intensity. There's a circle that I indicated was the possible tornado here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and leave this information on the screen. I'm going to step off for just a second, kind of go consult computers here and see what information I have for you. But again, a reminder, this tornado warning is in effect until 3 p.m. The National Weather Service Doppler radar still indicating a possible tornado. I just want to switch over and check from what we're seeing from our storm report. So far right now, again, the main focus is just on this possible tornado as it moves to the northeast and into the northern sections of Wynn Parish. Eventually, if it were to hold together, southern portions of Jackson Parish and northwestern Caldwell Parish may end up having to deal with that storm as well. So again, just kind of keep in mind that this is a possibility as we go through the remainder of the afternoon. And just also pardon the fact that I'm going to carry my cell phone out here with me on the screen just because I can get alerts from the National Weather Service via cell phone. It's just a heck of a lot easier to stay out here with you folks. And then if I have to scroll through it, what have you, we'll just roll with that. Again, Wynn Parish under that tornado warning. I believe that the storm to our south is also starting to kind of act up way out into southern sections of Natchitoches Parish. I don't want to get overly specific on this particular storm as turn the telestrator off for just a second and we clear everything off the map. Again, a reminder of the tornado warning until 3 o'clock, headed toward the Dodson area. If you are in Dodson, you should be sheltered. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a new tornado warning out to the south and west from Natchitoches Parish. That's technically outside of our viewing area, but that new tornado warning could, in theory, include portions of Grant Parish, which is in our viewing area. So again, for folks that are in Dodson, going back to the storm that has triggered this first tornado warning of the day, I will say that the overall storm relative velocities, what we look at to measure winds going toward and away from the radar, the reds are winds going away from the radar, the green is winds going toward. And so when you see the reds and greens together, that usually indicates some type of twisting or spin in the atmosphere, especially when they get really, really close together, like what we're seeing here. The other kicker with this is the bolder colors, the brighter reds, the brighter greens indicate stronger winds. And while there is some slightly higher green coloring there south of Dodson, doesn't necessarily indicate anything that was overly aggressive in terms of rotation. That said, a couple of minutes ago, we definitely had something that was pretty menacing on radar. And again, you take a look at our live storm tracker Doppler radar, which is, in all fairness, kind of fighting some rainfall off to the south and west. That area, it's kind of tough to see. Switching over to the shear marker, this again indicates any type of gusty or strong winds, and depending on how that feature looks on radar, so where a meteorologist comes into play, sometimes this is more of a damaging wind signature, sometimes it's more of a tornado signature. I will say that we do see some strong winds south of Dodson, but nothing necessarily indicating in either direction that that would be a possible tornado signature or a damaging wind signature. That said, just again, heed the tornado warnings. These storms typically, especially in this area, this time of year, they kind of run with their environment. So if the environment is favorable at times, you'll see these storms pulse up in intensity and strength. And then at times, as they run into a less favorable environment, they'll tend to kind of fizzle down in strength. As this storm has now crawled east of 167 and now southeast of the Dodson area, if you're in Dodson, please stay sheltered. If you live to the north and east of Dodson, just be mindful of some of the heavy rainfall that we're seeing in some of these areas. Some small hail, if not even quarter-sized hail, is possible in these areas as well. So again, please be in your safe place, sheltered, away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. I know I'm switching back and forth between a lot of different radar screens, just trying to get at the best vantage point of this possible tornado that has now crawled east of the Highway 167 corridor. Kind of resetting folks that have just joined our live streams or our live coverage on air. There are 2 new tornado warnings off to the south and west of our viewing area. We'll get to that info in just a minute. I just want to switch over to our live storm tracker Doppler radar and just remind folks of what is unfolding across the area as we speak. In our area, technically, we have a tornado warning until 3 p.m. for portions of Wynn Parish. And again, I'm going to go to the cell phone for just a second. We also now have a tornado warning out for portions of Grant Parish. National Weather Service Doppler radar indicating a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado 13 miles west of Lena, moving northeast at 45 miles per hour. So that is a new tornado warning out for Grant Parish. And while this storm is technically outside of our viewing area, it will be moving into Grant Parish here shortly. So for the folks in southwestern Grant Parish, this is your call to action. Get to your safe place, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. And again, we'll get to that storm as it approaches our area here shortly. I want to go back to the Wynn Parish storm, just kind of getting the latest radar scans in this area. And again, just bear with me as I bounce from kind of radar screen to radar screen to radar screen, trying to get us the best vantage point of what is happening currently in these areas. So again, we switch over to what's called the storm relative velocity. You can see those reds and greens combined together. And in fact, I'm going to stay on this particular radar image for a brief period of time, because I can actually go back over to that Grant Parish storm and get a decent vantage point of it as well. So here's a look at the Dodson storm, or what we're calling the Dodson storm. I'm calling the Dodson storm is a tornado that, or a possible tornado that just passed to the south and east of Dodson, well to the north and east of Winfield. If you are in Winfield, you are not under this tornado warning. You are under a tornado watch until 7 p.m. tonight. But again, you can see as we zoom in very closely, here is, I believe, Hatton Road and Gars Mill, the community up here. Here's Jake Creel Road and the Hudson community, and this is our possible tornado. Doesn't necessarily look as organized as it did earlier, but again, as I mentioned, these storms tend to kind of pulse up and down in intensity. So if the warning remains in place, please stay sheltered in your safe place, away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. This is our new tornado warning that includes portions of Grant Parish. There's technically 2 tornado warnings out, and I'll explain why. The National Weather Service in Shreveport is responsible for this county warning area here. The National Weather Service in Lake Charles is responsible for this county warning area here. And our possible tornado is in far southern Natchitoches Parish, kind of riding right along the line southwest of I-49. So 2 different tornado warnings from 2 different weather service offices to cover the same storm. Again, far southwestern slivers of Grant Parish in that tornado warning. Keep an eye on this storm. We'll obviously keep you updated. That tornado warning stays until 3 p.m. For Natchitoches and Grant parishes. Again, it also includes interests a little bit farther to the south and west, again, outside of our viewing area into the Alexandria and Lake Charles television market. So back to our main focus, the Wynn Parish storm. As this storm continues to crawl to the east, it will also continue to pack some fairly strong winds associated with it. I will say that the tornado signature is not as well defined as it was earlier, but that doesn't mean that a tornado cannot form. So let's switch back over to our live velocity. You can still see a lot of jumbled kind of greens and reds together. Pretty messy radar image, to be honest with you. And so we'll switch back over to the Fort Johnson radar screen, again, formerly known as Fort Polk, in north central section or southwestern sections of Louisiana. So you see this storm and how it's made up currently as we approach the 2:30 or now past the 2:30 time frame. We've been on air for about the last 20 minutes or so on NBC 10 and Fox 14 and on our Facebook page following this particular storm that really started and originated west of Highway 167, west of Dodson. It has now started to crawl eastward along Highway 165. Now, if you are familiar with these areas, excuse me, not at 165 is back over here to the east. This is 167. Got a little mixed up there. Again, Highway 84 to the south here from Winfield. And you folks are not under this tornado warning currently. It's mainly for folks now east of 167. And we'll also focus in southeastern sections of Jackson Parish, far northeastern sections of Wynn Parish. This includes the Sykes community, which is in northeastern sections of the parish, or at least I believe it includes the Sykes community. Let me triple check on that, because that should be one of the next communities up. In this possible storm. Yeah, there's the Sykes community right here. Here's the Hill community. And again, Jake Creel Road. On the far left-hand side of your screen is where our possible tornado is. I was kind of looking upstream to what we were dealing with, or downstream, what we were dealing with the storm and the possible communities that are going to be impacted. Again, Gars Mill, the Hudson area is probably seeing some very heavy rainfall. You folks have been sheltered, or hopefully have been sheltered for at least the last 10 or 15 minutes. Stay sheltered as long as this tornado warning warning remains in effect. I'm going to go ahead and leave the basic information on the screen, and in fact, I'm going to go ahead and zoom us out just a little bit so we get a look at that Grant Parish storm as well. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to kind of bounce from being on the screen with you to not being on the screen with you. I can check my cell phone for certain things, but it's easier just to walk to the computer for other stuff. So again, these tornado warnings stay in effect for another half hour across the area. If you are in the tornado warned places, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors, put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Continuing to follow any developments to the east and to the north, but generally speaking, what we're seeing rain-wise is really going to limit the potential for some of these storms to get organized and become severe farther northward. I'm not saying that folks along and north of I-20 can't see severe weather potential. It's certainly a possibility, but I think the focus right now is on the southern parishes, generally along and south of I-20, where wind shear is maximized. These areas have not seen the rainfall, and they're also south of the warm front. And I don't want to get into a big meteorology lesson when we have tornado warnings in the area, but that warm front is critical right now in maximizing wind shear and destabilizing the environment, allowing for what we call surface-based storms. Storms that are north of the warm front are generally going to be elevated somewhat. That doesn't bring much of a severe weather threat, or it doesn't bring much of a tornado threat to the area. Farther southward, south of that boundary, surface-based storms that can develop near the surface are the ones that bring the greater tornado threat. The storm to the south and west in southern Natchitoches Parish really started to get some strength on it. We'll keep a closer eye on that as it approaches Grant Parish here, I would say in the next half hour or so. If you're in the southwestern sections of Wynn Parish, keep a very close eye on that storm, and this is your call to action. Go find your interior portion of your home away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. You're essentially playing hide and seek with a tornado and flying debris. Make sure that you put as many structures and barriers as you can in place to keep yourself safe. I know a lot of our school kids are out of school this week because of Thanksgiving. Some are in, some are out. Most of them are out. Make calls to if you have teenagers at home and maybe they're just kind of hanging out at the house and enjoying the break. We know teenagers don't pay attention to the weather, so make sure that you call them and let them know what's going on, and make sure that they are in their safe place as well. Make phone calls to anybody you know that's in these impacted areas as we continue to follow this storm as it moves farther and farther away from the Fort Johnson radar site and continues to move farther and farther away from Highway 167. 165 over here on the far right-hand side of your screen. If this storm were to kind of continue to hang on farther downstream, you're looking at Columbia, Grayson, Clark, some of these areas in central and northern sections of Caldwell Parish. Not guaranteeing that this storm is going to need a tornado warning for its entire life cycle, but the environment out ahead of the boundary is quite favorable for that type of activity. So this is our possible tornado continuing to, as the new information and the new warning. This is not a new warning, it's an update to the existing tornado warning is issued by the National Weather Service in Shreveport. I'll go ahead and read that status message out loud just as we get the newest information. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado. Actually, I'm on the wrong warning. Still continuing to keep an eye on that Grant Parish storm too. But basically, all of that information to say, the tornado warning remains in effect for areas east of Dodson. Not really any significant change with the warning itself as it heads towards the Sykes community. So again, if you are in Sykes, make sure that you are taking your proper tornado precautions. Interior portion of your home away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and make sure that you protect yourself from flying debris. If you have time and you're out ahead of these storms, with tornado warned storms, we also typically often encourage folks, if they have a helmet nearby. I know it sounds silly and kind of contrary, but if you get hit in the head with flying debris, you're going to be really happy that you had it. Another thing that oftentimes sounds silly to a lot of folks when we talk about tornado warnings is put on shoes. If you have to run outside, or if you have to go outside after the storm for whatever, that's another opportunity that you don't have to step over flying debris when you're barefoot. So those are things that, again, sound trivial, but when you're kind of preparing for the worst, if you will, they're things that you're probably going to be happy that you did in the event that the worst case scenario happens. So again, make sure you're staying sheltered. Northern and northeastern sections in and around Sykes. I know that's a relatively small community. I know folks that live in that area, so again, just kind of calling out that main community in northeastern sections of Wynn Parish. And in full disclosure, It's a relatively rural section of Wynn Parish as well. Quickly looking out and outside of our viewing area, this storm is technically not in our viewing area currently, but is a really mean looking storm off to the south and west. This is south of I-49. The red line that you see here is I-49. You can see Colfax, Highway 71. Here's Montgomery and Natchez, Louisiana, Boyce, and then eventually Ball and Alexandria and Marksville, and some of those areas are back to our south and east. But this storm, as it starts to move toward Grant Parish, you folks that are in the path of it, I'm telling you, make sure that you're in your safe place, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors. And I know that we repeat ourselves a lot during severe weather coverage. It makes people very angry, but for folks that are just getting to a TV, panic and anxiety are really real in these types of events. Don't panic. And I know anxieties are high when severe weather threats unfold. No reason to panic. Just move calmly to your safe place. And we'll continue to kind of track these storms as they move off to the east and the northeast. This is our possible tornado here. Again, well outside of our viewing area, but in the Gorham community, and will continue to move to the north and east, eventually impacting areas along I-49. I don't want to spend too much time on that storm simply because it technically is outside of our viewing area, but just a reminder that as that storm approaches Grant Parish, it will be a problem, or it will be a headache that some folks have to deal with. Back to our northern Wynn Parish storm. This storm has continued to show less and less in the way of organization. Still probably dumping some very heavy rainfall, maybe even some small hail to the north and east of Sykes. That possible tornado as it sits, sitting near the Sykes community as we stand right now. I'm going to switch over to our radar, which we're continuing to get quite the boomy thunderstorms here in northern Louisiana. And so, again, that also tends to kind of what we call attenuate the radar. We've got heavy rainfall, and the radar beam's trying to get to these storms, but it keeps hitting all the rain around the radar site closer to the site. So as we watch this storm, you don't really see much, but just, again, heed the warnings, be in your safe place. What we cannot see is what's happening technically at ground level. We're looking a few hundred feet, or if not a few thousand feet up in the atmosphere, and tornadoes happen at the ground. So unless we get an eyewitness report, in most instances, we can't track these tornadoes unless there is debris that's being lofted in the air. So again, in this instance, heed the warning, make sure you're in your safe place, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors. If you're on the roadways, the one thing that we always tell folks in kind of a worst case scenario, if you're heading toward a tornado warned storm and you see a tornado or something of that nature, don't pull under the overpasses like you saw the videos from 20 and 30 years ago. Don't do that. Make sure that you, worst case, last case scenario, you pull over and you need to find a ditch or a culvert or something like that, and you lay flat in that. But before that even becomes an issue, we strongly urge folks to just find somewhere to pull over, whether it be a convenience store, a grocery store, something that's going to be open that'll let you in, and just wait for the storm to pass and find some sort of shelter. There's a lot of dollar stores and supermarkets and things of that nature that are open, especially this time of the day. Just go there and wait for this storm to pass if you're in this immediate area. Now, in all full disclosure, I am very, very aware that in northeastern sections of Wynn Parish, there isn't much. There's a lot of relatively rural area. There's a lot of trees. There's a lot. It's tough to see, even in the middle of the afternoon. Heavy rainfall, things of that nature. Just keep in mind that it may be really, really tough to see. You come over a tree line, and the next thing you know, there's problems. So again, if you can avoid this area until the storms pass, that's probably the best advice that we can give. The tornado warning goes until 3 o'clock. We've got another technically 18 minutes on this tornado warning. Whether it actually lasts that long, we'll just have to wait and see. Continuing to keep a very close eye on this storm back out to the south and west. The tornado warning that's in effect for portions of Grant Parish. And again, it's just a very small sliver. Now we have a confirmed tornado on the ground. This warning has now been updated by the National Weather Service. And again, we'll continue to focus a little bit more on this storm as it starts to enter our area. But when you see these red warnings go to purple, it usually means either confirmed or observed. This one has been radar confirmed, meaning that the debris that I was just telling you about that can sometimes be lofted and seen on radar has now been visible on radar. So again, this is one of those instances where I can step off the screen and perhaps show you in a little bit more detail what I'm talking about. But again, reminder now that this tornado in Grant, headed toward Grant Parish, is considered a confirmed tornado. This is headed toward just to the west of the Gorham community. Confirmed tornado over Lena, moving northeast at 45 miles per hour, including the Gorham and Aloha communities as it moves into Grant Parish. So here's what I was talking about earlier, is that in many instances you can see debris being lofted on radar. And so if we go from this radar screen, which indicates your possible tornado in this area, well, now in this area right here, anytime you see kind of what we call basically a dead zone in the radar on correlation coefficient, and you can see it kind of essentially just perfectly aligned and corresponding to our radar echo, if you will, or a little gap in the radar screen. So there is what we are considering possible lofted debris with this tornado as it moves toward the Colfax community. This is going to be far southwestern sections of Grant Parish that are in now this confirmed tornado warning, moving off to the north and east. So again, a reminder for folks that are in this area, proper tornado precautions are very, very critical at this point. I want to switch over to the storm relative velocity, same area, the reds and greens. Move over to the shear marker. This is what I'm talking about. When you start seeing those brighter, bolder colors, that is where we really start seeing a heightened concern for a possible tornado. Technically, this is still outside of our viewing area. Here's I-49. This is in Natchitoches Parish. Grant Parish is up here. I'll take all the buttons and everything down. Here's Grant Parish. So this warning technically only includes a very small sliver of southwestern Grant Parish, but it is headed your direction, folks. So make sure that you take whatever precautions necessary at this point to protect yourself from this storm. And to be honest with you, the environment out ahead of it still looks quite favorable for tornadic development. So I would say southern Grant Parish and maybe even a longer-lived storm that could move into portions of Grant and LaSalle Parish later on in its life cycle, and that's obviously something that we'll continue to keep an eye on here in the short term. I want to go back to that the other tornado-warned storm that is in Wynn Parish. That tornado warning still technically in effect. We'll be moving into portions of Caldwell Parish here shortly. Again, the tornado warning goes until 3 o'clock. So we've got about another 15 minutes or so. Whether this tornado warning will actually make it that last 15 minutes, we'll just have to wait and see. The National Weather Service makes these calls, and they are looking at a lot of different, surveying a lot of different things in the atmosphere. I want to zoom in as closely as we can on these reds and greens. Yeah, not the kinds of signatures that we were seeing earlier. This storm looks to have kind of either crossed over the warm front or has just run into an environment that's not quite as favorable and as conducive for tornadic activity. If you're in this warning area, please make sure you stay sheltered. It's probably absolutely pouring in a lot of these areas anyway, so you don't really want to go outside and have to deal with the heavy rainfall. I would highly advise against travel in these areas, considering that many spots are probably seeing a quick inch to inch and a half of rain associated with the storms that are moving through the area. So as we zoom back out just a little bit, and for folks that are just joining our severe weather coverage, whether it be on air or online, just a reminder, a tornado watch remains in effect until 7 o'clock tonight. And as we zoom out across the rest of the region, you can see the one tornado warning for Wynn Parish, a storm that is kind of on the weakening tail end of things. And then the other tornado warning that will be crossing the I-49 corridor here shortly, that's the storm that we're going to have to keep a close eye on as it approaches southwestern Wynn Parish. Back to the south and west, any of these storms through Toledo Bend also kind of taking on what we call the supercellular structure, kind of all lining up together. And I would think that these are the areas that perhaps have the greatest tornado threat as these storms continue to crawl eastward and northeastward through the rest of the afternoon and night. All that said, I would say along and north of I-20, the severe weather threat is low. It's not zero for a lot of you folks, and I know much of southern Arkansas and areas north of I-20 are under the tornado watch until 7. Make sure that you stay alert. But also, in all fairness, I know that there's going to be a lot of areas back in northwestern Louisiana and southwestern Arkansas that here soon will probably be trimmed away from the tornado watch if they haven't already. Want to switch over real quick. In fact, we could pull up that the watch map and kind of give you a better idea of what we're dealing with in terms of the tornado watch that's in effect for the area. Here's a look at that watch as it stands, the tornado warning that's in effect for northern Wynn Parish, and then the confirmed tornado, the radar confirmed tornado that is approaching Grant Parish Parish as we speak. So again, just a reminder of the overall scope of the severe weather potential, although I would say, again, areas along and south of I-20, or generally just now south of I-20, probably have the best severe weather threats, the best makeup for severe weather here in the short term. I want to switch over to what we're dealing with here in the West Monroe studios. Obviously, if you're out here in northern Louisiana along the I-20 corridor, make sure that you're extra cautious on the roadways. Again, less than ideal time to be outside. So let's go back to the radar. Heavy rainfall continues, some occasional lightning. The main focus is on the two severe warnings, tornado-warned storms as we approach the 3 o'clock time frame, and this storm starts to exit the warning area out of Wynn Parish into portions of western Caldwell Parish. Again, not necessarily indicating a very strong signature on radar of a possible tornado, but it did earlier in its life cycle. So our main focus is now on the tornado-warned storm as it approaches the portions of Grant Parish, and I believe my hand tractor is, there we go, starting to kind of get a little fidgety. But let's zoom back in closer to this storm as it continues to approach Highway 71 and basically crossing I-49 as we speak. Again, far southwestern slivers of Grant Parish included in this tornado warning. I don't even believe this warning includes Colfax. It does not include Dry Prong. But if you are in these areas, start thinking ahead. Start thinking as this storm approaches your area where you're going to go, what places, where you're going to take your shelter if this tornado warning continues. I want to switch back over to the reflectivity, which shows a little bit clearer picture, if there is one, of the possible tornado as it approaches I-49. For those areas, this is very heavy rainfall. It is not an ideal area to travel. I've been along the I-49 corridor from Natchitoches to Alexandria. A lot of folks tend to drive very, very fast. There's a lot of heavy rainfall in these areas. So again, please exercise caution. And if you can get off the roadway, I would highly suggest that you do so. Continuing to just, and I know I'm checking my cell phone, and it's probably not the best way to do things, but it's easier than stepping off screen. To continue to keep an eye on what we're dealing with in terms of these tornado warnings, the possible debris signature across Natchitoches Parish, and the tornado warning in Wynn Parish as well. The general thought process is that as we head toward the 3 o'clock hour, this storm has weakened to the point where it probably won't need a tornado warning moving into portions of Caldwell Parish. It may need a severe thunderstorm warning. It's a little too early to speculate on that as well. So the main focus right now is on the storm that is technically outside of our viewing area, moving into Grant Parish. But if you have friends or family that are traveling, say, from Shreveport to Natchitoches to Alexandria, they need to be keeping a very close eye on the storm that is kind of sandwiched between Natchitoches and Alexandria along the I-49 corridor. Also need to keep an eye out for any of these little discrete cells that continue to migrate to the north and northeast as we head through the rest of the afternoon for tornadic potential with them. The same with these. As you see these little comma signatures, a lot of folks are probably pretty familiar with these types of things, and we talk about hook echoes and supercells and things of that nature. These are the supercell structures that often produce tornadoes. These storms can start spinning rather quickly, especially in a very sheared environment. So when warnings are issued for your area, make sure that you are acting quickly and calmly. Again, tornado watch in effect till 7. I would expect the general severe weather threat to end around that time, 9 p.m. probably at the latest, across the Mississippi River Valley as the rain continues to end from northwest to southeast during that time. But we are really technically just kind of hitting the peak of the severe weather potential across the southern parishes as we go through the rest of the afternoon. For those that are just joining, tornado warning remains in effect till 3 o'clock for Wynn Parish. This tornado warning likely will not be extended into Caldwell Parish, but still a very strong storm capable of producing maybe some 50 or 60 mile an hour winds moving into northwestern sections of Caldwell Parish. And meanwhile, the other storm that we've been watching is a radar-confirmed tornado, meaning that we have seen debris on radar that indicates the possibility that a tornado is on the ground. It has not been observed visually by a storm spotter or a chaser or anything of that nature, but again, radar is indicating that a tornado has possibly formed in this area. And again, you probably hear over my microphone the extremely loud, heavy rainfall that we're hearing and experiencing experiencing here at the West Monroe Studios, which has kind of limited our radar's overall scope in what we're seeing with this possible tornado. And this storm has really kind of come down in intensity here in the last, I would say, 20 minutes or so. When the storm originally prompted the tornado warning west of Dodson, it was really wrapped up rather rapidly, and we were concerned of a brief tornado perhaps headed toward the Dodson area. We've not received any damage reports from those areas, but we'll kind of stay alert to those through the rest of the day. But back to the reflectivities mode, and back also to kind of a wider scope view, and continuing to watch the storm as it approaches Grant Parish and the other storms starting to line up behind it. It could be an active afternoon for our southern parishes, generally south of the I-20 corridor, as this storm now starts to approach the Colfax area and may need a new tornado warning soon, to include a good chunk of Grant Parish as well. You can see Highway 71. That moves through the southern portions of the parish, and the tornado warning as it sits in the far southwestern reaches of the parish. But again, this is a potentially radar-confirmed tornado moving to the north and east and approaching Highway 71. It's already now generally right along Highway 49, I-49. This is where a possible tornado would be, continuing to trail off to the north and east. So again, if you have friends, family traveling, even along Highway 71, make sure you make those phone calls, let folks know what's going on so they can start planning ahead. I would say that the radar signature in terms of the possible tornado is a little tough to see there, and it doesn't look quite as menacing on some of the velocity products as it does on the reflectivity, which really shows a fairly strong supercellular structure in these areas. So again, off to the south near the Boyce community, and eventually moving toward the Alexandria region as well, there's another storm that's starting to kind of flare up, and that's going to be kind of the tendency of things as we head through the rest of the afternoon. Zooming out, again, going to kind of give the bird's eye view as I step off the screen for just a second to check with our friends at the National Weather Service and make sure that they don't have any reports that we need to pass along to you in terms of damage and things of that nature. Again, that possible tornado moved right toward the Colfax area earlier. Can't necessarily say with any certainty that a tornado actually hit that area. And the plus side to it is the tornado warning for Wynn Parish has been expired. So the Wynn Parish tornado is the Wynn Parish tornado warning will drop off the map here in a very brief period of time. So that's good news for the folks in Wynn Parish. Continue to keep an eye on that storm in Caldwell Parish as well. Like I said, it's not tornadic at this point, but we're going to have to keep an eye on all storms as we go through the next couple of hours. Reminder of the tornado warning that is in effect for Grant Parish. We're going to go ahead and stick with that tornado warning both on air and online.